So I am just going to dive in and talk a little bit about problem-based learning and what that means for us at Hatch. Have any of you ever heard of this particular learning model, problem-based learning? Okay, and yes, the recordings will be available. Problem-based learning is sometimes called PBL, which confuses people because they've heard of project-based learning. So we're going to talk a little bit about what this PBL means and how in some ways it is the same and some ways super different than the other one. Okay, now I'm going to see if I can make this work. What if I do this? Whoa. Let me stop sharing again and go back because I think I just had a tech glitch. Apologies. Okay, share screen. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so in this PBL, maybe not, what we are doing is solving problems in unique ways, right? That's the whole point of problem-based learning. Advantages for those of us who are in schools, and quite honestly for students who spend a lot of time in schools asking, like, why do I need to know this, without necessarily getting satisfactory answers. One of the things about problem-based learning is it stresses the application of skills and knowledge. You don't come to school just to do school, right? The point of school is to take what you know and do something with it. And problem-based learning allows you to do that. Related to that, then, is it makes what you're doing in school much more contextualized. It gives you a sense for what in the quote unquote real world, which we say as if school's not real, but you know what I mean, gives you a sense for how what you're doing is important and how it can help you do things you want to do when you leave school. Problem-based learning, like any problem that's actually real, is going to be messy, it's going to be complicated. And when you work in a problem-based learning model, right, like you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We're good with that. You're going to make adjustments, you're going to try again. That is all part of, you know, a learning process and a problem-solving process. And, you know, often in school, we seem like we are rewarding people who get it right the first time. That's not real. That's not even fair to you all as students. So you'll try again. You'll try again. You'll try again. Maybe you won't actually be able to solve the problem, but you will definitely learn things as you go. Real problems have more than one answer. And you and the student next to you may have completely different approaches to something. And we will like listen to you, debate the pros and cons of what your answers might be. Maybe we'll decide that, you know what, they're both equally valid and relevant. Maybe one of them has some advantages, the other one doesn't. But through that conversation, you will learn the importance of multiple approaches. Problem-based learning as a strategy requires a lot of things for you that are not like, I memorized some information and put it back on a test, or I learned how to do something and can replicate that over and over, right? It requires you to communicate with your teachers, with your peers, with yourself, in fact. Often there is some collaboration involved because big messy problems are better served by more than one brain working on them. And they require critical thinking. And all of those are skills that we know from years of research and from lots of conversations with people out in that quote unquote real world that they are looking for in, you know, high school graduates, college graduates. Those are those 21st century skills that personally, I think it's kind of bonkers that we still call them 21st century skills because we're 21% of the way through the 21st century, but that's what we call them anyway. Problem-based learning is great in that it can be done on a really short time scale. Like you may be given a problem in a single class period and asked to work on it and come up with some kind of solution. These could be slightly longer things, like it could be a slightly more gnarly problem that requires a couple of days or a week of, thinking, research, applying what you know. And sometimes these can be even longer projects than that, okay? One of the places that problem-based learning draws its historical roots is actually from medical school. So case studies and problem-based learning started as an official approach in the 1950s at Case Western Med School. So it was at that point a revolutionary way to help medical students learn how to be doctors. Since that time, it has, blossomed and spread into business schools. So if any of you have family members, or if any of you adults in the room have gone to business school, that case study approach that you'll often see draws on this tradition. Engineering schools often use this, where you're given a human issue that needs some kind of technological solution. And as engineers, you have to design some kind of way to address that problem. Law schools, right? When law students study case law and look at precedent, that is also drawing on this tradition. And now we use it a lot in schools as well. It did not, however, start in a high school scenario. So as you learn problem-based learning, you're also getting a leg up should you decide you want to go to professional school later on. And the problems, they come from the teachers. They may come from students, right? If we're studying something and you see something in your world that you want to address, bring it to us. Let's talk. Or it could be the problems come from a conversation and a collaboration between both groups. And at any given point in a trimester, you may have a combination of those approaches. Ultimately, our goal is for you to be able to identify problems that you see that are relevant to you, that are related to what we're doing in class, bring them in, let's talk about how you can solve them, and let you go forward. This is sort of a traditional PBL cycle. So how does this really work? Like if you were to come to Hatch, what would it look like?
Hey, Jessica, I can't actually see it.
Oh.
I just realized as you're saying that there probably is a visual.
Yes, there is a visual. Let's try this again. Let's see. What can you see now, Jeannie?
A pyramid.
Okay. Yep, we're there. Did you see the last one?
No.
Okay. So I'm just going to put this one here for 20 seconds so you can see it. Which is basically the stuff I just talked about. And thank you. Like, I am sure as we go through today, there are going to be all kinds of weird tech glitches. So please shout at me. Okay, so here's the pyramid. This is what a problem-based cycle looks like. So in the first step, you're going to just examine and define the problem, right? It is really hard to answer a question if you don't have your hands around what that question is. Then you're going to take stock of what you already know. Oftentimes, you know a lot more than you think you do. So we're going to honor that fact that you know a lot. Then you get to identify what other things you still need to know, right? If you already knew it, you wouldn't need to come to school. So clearly there's going to be stuff you don't know yet that is important. You will design some kind of solution and evaluate other potentials until you finally say, this is the one. I'm going to say, this is the one that's going to solve the problem. And then you're going to report out your findings. Notice that in no point in this does it say spend 3 weeks making a diorama of X, Y, or Z thing. That is because Problem-based learning is not actually the same thing as project-based learning. So problem-based learning is not fully student-driven. This is not a free-for-all. This is not the dreaded long-term class project necessarily that I know can strike fear in the hearts of students and families. Problem-based learning is not unstructured. We don't just cut you loose and say, work for, a week or a month on this thing. Problem-based learning is not always done in groups. Sometimes you will work by yourself, and that is important, just like group work is important. Like I said, this is not about the diorama necessarily, although sometimes problem-based learning does have a project at the end. It could be a presentation to a group in the community who helped identify the problem that you're addressing. It could be an op-ed to the Seattle Times. Like, there are lots of things that this could look like. And it is not project-based learning, although they are related. Okay, sometimes we say problem-based learning and project-based learning are cousins. Okay. A couple of examples, and then I think I have to cut you loose. This is what I do with my biology students fairly often. If you have a set of symptoms and a medical history, can you diagnose a patient and design a course of treatment? Right? Maybe you've learned some stuff about anatomy and physiology. So here's why you should actually use anatomy and physiology, right? Maybe it's a pretty straightforward diagnosis. Maybe it's a little more complicated. How can you use persuasive language to convince your parents to let you do whatever? My 17-year-old daughter keeps talking about wanting a tattoo. I keep telling her she would get a lot more mileage on that if she could give me a compelling argument for why she should have a tattoo. It is similar to when she wanted a rabbit when she was younger. So, part of life is convincing people that what you want is an important thing. So let's practice. We just came out of a census, and what can we do to impact gerrymandering in congressional districts? And how can we make those more just and equitable? Right? All of those are examples of problems that students might address.